Hi, I'm Self-Critical Chloe, and today I'm going to be talking about a crazy dream that I ended up having and decided to draw. Um, so it's going to be on the screen, but before I get into that, since this is a new channel, I wanted to take a moment to talk about what the channel is about. I'm relatively new to art myself. I've only been drawing for about a month and a half at this point. Technically a little bit longer because I had an injury, but I described that in the previous video. Audio really horrible, but anyways, the reason I started doing the YouTube was mostly for myself, um, but also so if um, so that if I could help somebody learn something that I've already learned or something like that, or maybe somebody else can help me something they've learned or see mistakes that I'm making. So hopefully that was the overall goal, was to try to create a scenario to where I can learn from other artists and other artists can learn from me. Um, so whether they're new or not, that was the ultimate goal. Now, as far as today, let's get into the crazy character that I decided to draw this time. So, the character that you see me working out the frame for right now, um, you can actually probably see the. Actually, it's not up yet. Okay. Um, so, since the file hasn't been named yet, so you're actually getting to see this. But had a pretty crazy dystopian future dream and decided that I wanted to actually try to draw one of the characters from it. The premise for the dream was actually really interesting. Some sort of organization got charged with raising 18 kids for the purpose of essentially raising like the perfect soldier. Um, they were given the best technology, like most advanced, everything that was that could possibly be given, like to raise these kids, like including like cybernetics and stuff like that. So some of them were cybernetically enhanced, and the character that I'm drawing right now is one of them. Um, Somewhere along the line, though, like the purpose of these kids, they were, like I said, they were being raised for war. And essentially, what ends up happening from this perspective um, is the rebel faction that, what do you call it, um, is in the world and everything like that. The rebel faction hears about it at some point and end up getting some other operatives placed into a position to where they were able to actually recruit and somewhat sway some of these kids to join their side. And there's a point where these kids like actually are adults and everything like that, and basically they start getting a little bit more freedom and everything like that to wander around, so on and so forth. Um, and the ones that, at this point, the ones that were recruited begin taking out high value targets for the rebels. Now, for the character I'm drawing right now, I'm not going to give you all the details that of this extremely vivid, very detailed dream. Again, there were 18 characters in total that I had that were involved, which was absolutely insane, and I just wanted to draw at least one of them. Now, I forget the character's full name. I remember her sister's name though. Her sister's name is Kate, but for whatever reason, like throughout like all their training and everything like that, she ends up becoming the unit leader, and likewise ends up getting the nickname Groaner, which I'm not 100%. I'm not 100% sure what the reasoning behind that was. And it was more of a, well, it just kind of happened type thing. So, yeah, anyways, fast forwarding a little bit to where some of these kids end up taking out the high value targets and everything like that. Groner was not one of the ones that was recruited. She was deemed too indoctrinated at the time that they were able to get operatives in. So she's one of the ones to where she wasn't recruited. She's on the like completely brainwashed side of this. And from the perspective of like those in power and everything like that, like think of it almost like Caesar from the Hunger Games moment, where he's got his like own little show. Like there's something kind of like that, not quite, but it was like kind of like a news broadcast thing for when all this stuff starts happening for the high value targets, to where she ends up getting blamed a lot, saying that, oh, she can't control her own soldiers, so on and so forth. So obviously she gets like incredibly irritated by this, and needless to say that these kids were raised with some of the most advanced technology that the world had to offer at the time. And like fully educated from like practically from birth. Like they were raised to be geniuses, basically. And essentially how this ends up working out is like their IQs just aren't on the chart. So she does this like a 10,000 IQ type moment where like she calculates, well, where would her sister go? Because her sister was one of the defectors. And so she ends up showing up to where her sister would go. And she, no joke, like very brutally puts 2 shots through her sister without any second thought or second care in the world. And there ends up being this very sad moment of, well, why'd you make me do this? Like, I didn't have to kill you or anything like that. And it's a very interesting moment for this character, because she actually does end up, of all things, killing her sister. Or at least as far as I can recall from the dream. So this is just kind of her background and everything like that. So for the rest of the video, though, I will essentially be talking about the processes that I'm going through, what I was trying to think, and for a lot of this, like especially for the gun, like I was trying to remember very minute details. And I do mean extremely minute details from the dream. And I kid you not, like I pulled every last bit of this from a random dream that I had, and was not expecting this to be nearly as cool. And for the gun, I actually did have to think, like, engineer like certain parts of it, like, well, okay, well, this is how this would look or function, etc., so on and so forth. So there was some complication to it. to some degree for that. And definitely made things a little bit of a challenge because I was trying to figure out, well, okay, well, how am I supposed to draw this in, or how am I supposed to get this particular effect? And for a lot of it, it just did not work as planned. Like, for example, the big drum style magazine, I end up playing with that like so much, like what's feasible, so on and so forth. And um like for the most part her hand is off screen as well. Like you get to see a little bit of the trigger finger, but the rest of the hand actually falls like just barely off screen. And I did this primarily for a design reason. One, I didn't want to have any clipping on the top, and I was trying to avoid any clipping on the sides, so that like, so for harsh straight edges, like if I wanted to pull this character, put them on my banner, which I actually plan to do. Um, I wanted to be able to put them in the middle of the banner without having any hard flat edges on the sides or the top. And so that was primarily why. So I was trying to get them to fit in the space properly. For the shading, you can see that I will actually go through the process of shading quite a few times, playing with where I want the shadows and light to fall. And for this, I use a lot of rough blocking. Generally, I don't do any kind of blending or refining for the most part. It's just very rough, very rough shapes in terms for this part. And there are a couple parts where I was like, okay, well, how does it look with like soft blending? Because I started to do some of the blending, and then I was like, no, I'm not really liking this either. And I do have to say, like, it is a little bit of a struggle to try to figure out how to fill X amount of time with just talking and trying not to like cough or sneeze or anything like that. It's very odd, but as you can see, I ended up changing the lighting side. I wasn't exactly liking how the what do you call it, shadows were falling. Particularly, I liked more how the shadows were falling from an opposite lighting angle, which it almost feels like every time I do shading, like I do it from the side, which I just feel terrible about it now. But one of the things I was trying to do, though, I was trying to get the character to look in the opposite direction of what I generally draw my characters for whatever reason. I don't know why. Um, just kind of a comfort zone for me. So I decided to make her look the other way and have her body facing more of like a twisted angle. Um, so and here I am just getting again like for the hair that this is really more detail work for the hair, and I pretty much end up keeping almost everything that I do for the hair. And you'll see me probably like flip through the shading quite a few times for the skin tone. Um, Most of it was literally because I accidentally did it on the silhouette layer, um, which I generally try not to do. But sometimes it happens, and I just didn't want to copy it all onto a new layer and then erase back. And just didn't want to. What I tend to use the silhouette for is more of a rough guidelines. If I see that I need to change the shape of something or something like that, then I do it. Like, I don't really hold on to that silhouette too much. It's a very, very, very rough and rudimentary guideline for me. And I really badly need to clear my throat, so I will be right back. Again, sorry about that. Trying to find a way to talk for this long without clearing my throat. Very difficult. Um, so for this particular project, I did find a blending brush that I liked. That wasn't the blending brush wasn't like super refined or anything like that. It still left a significant amount of texture behind, and I was really happy with the fact that it left a lot of texture behind still. And that was one of my goals. I most definitely wanted something that left a lot of texture behind. But again, for this, it's pretty much like the same process, just blocking in colors. If I struggle with something too much at the time, then the goal is to pretty much leave it and go on and do something else. That way, I'm not stuck on one thing too much. And the problem I have with the gun is like I really start to spend like too much time on this. But there was like, uh, granted, we're not there yet, but there was a moment where like the gun was really clear in my head, and um, like I knew for a fact, like, okay, well, this is what I want to do with it. So I just started like rendering and rendering and rendering and kept on going because I was like, it's there. Um, and you'll see when I eventually get there, but for the most part, as far as like skin texturing goes and everything like that, like I generally will leave certain areas like left out, um, and come back to them like when I'm feeling more comfortable with it. And again, like the line work that I used to, just like, or I should say the sketch work that I use, because the lines for that are very, very, very rough. I don't really hold on to that silhouette like too severely. Like, I'm not trying to keep it. Um, if I find something that I feel works better, then I do it. And the part that I struggled a lot with the gun is it's going to ultimately end up being a lot of geometric shapes. And I have not done a lot with geometric shapes, so that was definitely a very interesting experience trying to work that out. And I initially was going to try to do this like all in one piece and paint it all on one thing. And then I just like stopped and I was like, no, no, and start doing it part by part and just end up with an absurd amount of layers for me, because it's like really abnormal for me to use as many layers as I end up doing in this one. Um, and here again, I'm trying to figure out how I want to do the ridging, and the ridging just was not working how I wanted to. I do end up coming back to it significantly later, but that's not for quite some time. I do find a significantly easier and a much better way to do the ridging, and it just works out so much better. And I believe I actually recorded that. Unlike last time, on my last video, I went and made a pattern in a new document and pulled it over, and I think I had forgot to hit record. And there were a couple of times to where I did the same thing, to where like I'd pause the video to take a break real quick or something like that, started recording again and forgot to hit record, and towards the end, it'll really show because with the iWork, it will suddenly jump in quality a few times, or to where something will just suddenly be there and it wasn't there before, or something will suddenly be rendered when it wasn't. So I need to get it in my mind that, oh hey, yeah, like when you start doing this, like you need to stop and actually go to record, like no matter what. That way, like worst case scenario, like I can always edit something out, but if what's it called, but if I don't hit record, then it's not there to begin with. And part of how I'm judging these time lapses is really like, well, how much time did it take in total? Like, for example, I sped this up to 1500%, and there's probably at least an hour, if not more, that I didn't record. And I've got probably 10 hours of recording on this, and I sped it up quite significantly to a speed that I feel is comfortable, but not too fast, not too slow. So overall, this piece probably took me like 12 hours to do, if not just slightly more. Continuing on though, I started to learn a couple of tricks along the way. As you just seen a moment ago when I changed the color of the little lights there, I discovered that, oh hey, I can do something in any color, because keep in mind I'm new to Photoshop as well. I can do something in any color, and then I can Command U it Control U, and what do you call it? Change it to a color that makes sense, or change it to a specific color if I needed to. And here's where like all the geometric shapes like really start to get rough. I was trying to get like the proper shape with the outline lasso tool, and it just wasn't working. And I was starting to get a little irritated here until I finally did get it. Like I spent probably like 20 minutes trying to get like a decent geometric looking lasso tool, and then like I had to go through, reshape the end of that like to fit, then split it up into different layers and everything like that, and then geometric tool again so that I can properly shade and do everything like that on different layers. It was extremely time consuming, like all those little geometric things that you see me doing like for the grip right there, like this took me a really long time to do. It like just getting like the separation and color for the ridges was like an hour. Um, it really was not a very fun experience for that. But I did learn a lot of tips and tricks and also some shortcuts along the way because I have absolutely no idea why I didn't think of this to begin with. But I could have just created a pattern to do that and I would have been perfectly fine. And I didn't think of creating a pattern to do that. It would have been 10 times simpler, way easier. Here I'm testing like some scratches. I made a scratch brush. And scratches for this one ended up being like way too heavy. And essentially, how I made this scratch brush is I literally went and grabbed some random grunge texture and was like, and like literally like balanced it out to where it was only white or only white and black. And it just gave me a really heavy scratch texture, which just was not working nearly as much as I wanted to, and I was a little annoyed with it, so I went and made another one, which was much smaller, and that works out a little bit better. I was mostly just making it for a future, for the future portion of detailing and everything like that, where I actually do add scratches, scuffs, and everything like that to the vast majority of the gun. And again, for the magazine portion, like the geometric work on this was like really annoying to do. I wish that I would have thought of easier or better ways to do it because I could have put these on different layers from each other, and this would have been a million times easier to work on. Because I was already using a heavy amount of layers, but I did get a little bit more comfortable with the with the not lasso brush, but the lasso tool. So, I mean, I guess there's a benefit there. And again, going through using the pen tool to get those like geometric lines and everything like that. I do end up changing this up ever so slightly. The size of it gets massively increased quite a few times. And here's where I finally realized, oh, hey, like, why am I doing this when I can literally just create a new layer and do this on a new layer and separate it out that way? At this point, though, I had so many details that trying to warp or transform it in any way with Control T just kept on snapping it to other images, and I had to hide all of them so that I could actually work with what I was trying to work with. And it definitely gave me a little bit of an annoyance because, like, what I was trying to do right here was create like a small inner groove that you can see on the bottom of the clip. And I end up eventually getting it to my liking, but I probably spent more time on this than I absolutely needed to. And here I kind of realized that for like, say, example, the grip or something like that, where like I don't have a solid position for like, say, the clip or magazine, or in this case, a drum style magazine yet. But I probably should have done the grip design all the way down, and again, creating a pattern to do that would have been 10 times easier. And so for the ammo screen, which I'm working on right now, I came up with a brilliant idea because I was like, oh my god, I don't want to have to do like a little screen. And then I kind of realized that, oh, I've already done the screen. I can just pull the lighting from one of the other buttons and just rework it just a little bit and put it right there, and suddenly it works. So one of the other things that I was trying to get better about, which was, just doing stuff like that. Like if I can reuse something, then reuse it. It just makes it a little bit quicker to not have to spend the entire time like redoing it. Though then again, the screen didn't initially take me very long to begin with, so that wasn't much of an issue. So I mean, I could have probably knocked it out in about the same amount of time that it took me to just copy it and rewarp it. And here I'm working on the trigger / grip. This was a little bit more fine detail than I wanted it to be. And for a little while after I finish the majority of the gun, she's not gonna actually be holding it for quite some time. It's just kind of like floating there in air for the most part for a while. Luckily, I do remember, like, towards the end that I needed to come back and do that. And for the shirt, I ended up like, oh, and here I am making the pattern for the gun. So, it's a very simple process that I use. I essentially just create bars and basically just keep on copying it, so on and so forth, and then mess around with textures, so on and so forth, to get it to where like I want. And until I start getting like certain effects, so on and so forth. It's pretty easy overall. I was messing with the drop shadow quite a bit, and ultimately ended up to drop the drop shadow, and decided to instead go with an inner shadow and a slight bevel, and that worked a whole lot more to create a more three-dimensional effect. Actually, did the final image have, oh, it did, okay. I couldn't remember for a second because it's like those grooves look really different from what I remember putting in, and then I couldn't remember if I left them in or not. Now, for the shirt, I essentially just stole the initial background color and was like, I really like this color, picked out some lighter colors, and just started pretty much scribbling on the canvas. And that process worked a lot better than I expected it to, because I used a lot of very heavy brush strokes and just kind of left it like that. I didn't refine it really any further at all. I mean, other than when, what do you call it? other than when I add like color burning and color dodging. After this couple of moments, like that's pretty much it. I spend probably more work on the collar than I do anything else for the shirt. And here I am, like I said, I'm starting to pull back to some of the details that I initially left, and you'll see me do a couple of canvas flips. And the reason why the few canvas flips is when I flipped it the first time, I was like, wait, something's wrong here. And I realized that Photoshop's canvas flip is not intelligent enough to realize it needs to flip text. It just moves it. Um, so I thought that was actually a little funny and like odd because right now the text is upside down and it just looks a tad bit odd because like the firearm is designed for a left hand grip and a right hand trigger finger. Um, so like it just looks so odd from this perspective to me. Here I am cleaning up the ear, readjusting the hair for that, and doing a little bit of color burning. I end up dialing it back a lot and doing a very minimal amount and highlighting some of it just a little bit more. I play with the skin colors a little bit and some burning and stuff like that on the skin and end up just being like, well, I will do the color dodge and burn at the end. But for the most part, I was trying to get like all the skin to kind of be a unison color because the ear was a little uh, brighter and just wasn't working all that well for the shading and shadows and such, and it was really bothering me. Um, and for the most part, I do start going more into the facial details, trying to get proper proper colors and such for that. Um, the eye whites, I don't generally don't do much more than what they're at right now. And when I got to this point, I was like, wow. I was like, I need to learn how to do them better. So I decided to start messing around with it, and the eyes are really one of the areas that I forgot to record for. Um, and it's just really bad. I believe I get at least one of them in, and you can see kind of the process I start with, but you don't see any of the refining that I do for it, I'm pretty sure. Um, Again, I probably lost like maybe an hour of footage for just the eyes alone. And for a little bit here, I was actually just playing with the nose, trying to get the nose to do exactly what I wanted, and I eventually just kind of give up on it and be like, okay, well, it's good enough right now. Um, and just move on to doing the eyes. For the most part, I end up doing this over quite a few layers. I use multiple layers just for the eye whites and the actual colored irises for it, but over that, I end up actually doing a like a full like eyelid and like sculpting the actual like area around the eyes. Um, and there is a point where I do zoom in. I generally try to avoid doing that if I can. However, there are some details that you just kind of can't avoid. Um, and I did learn a couple of new tricks to do, like, for example, put the pink portion of the eye on a different layer. It will probably save me a lot of pain next time I do this for a character. Um, that way, I don't run into the issue that I'm running into here, to where the skin and the pink portion of the eye is on the same layer. And yeah, see, like, you didn't see any of the refinement process there. I ended up doing some of the shading for the eye whites, and then I decided, okay, well, I need to look at it from a farther angle, and again, I suddenly skipped a considerable amount of um, the painting process before I realized, oh, I'm not recording. So it's been one of the couple of problems that I've had for this. So for this one especially, and I need to get better at doing that. Um, anyways, I am drawing relatively close to the end of the video. So at the end of it, I'll go ahead and put up the finished piece. I'm not quite finished, so you've still got just a tad bit more time, and I do make her look off to the direction her head is facing. Like, she's not looking at us, she's looking off somewhere else. Um, so, yeah. But, this is Groner. So, um, the completely brainwashed, uh, soldier who ends up shooting her sister. So, yeah. I'm not really sure what to talk about for like the last few minutes. I'm really not. I guess we'll go ahead and start talking about the things that I wish I could have improved. Um, I'm not 100% happy with how the eyes turned out. I think I could have done better. Uh, there are definitely a lot of things, like especially with the gun, that I could have done better. I could have created a pattern for doing all the geometric stuff that I was doing very painstakingly. And that would have made a significant amount of it easier. Um, And again, most of this is in hindsight, as you guys haven't actually seen the final piece yet. I do end up adding some color dodging and color burning. I changed the color of the firearm as well. So, and all of that's actually being added in right now. Alright, well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. It's definitely very entertaining to take the time to sit there and actually draw something that was literally sculpted from my own mind. Like 100%, like no references or anything like that, which probably made this significantly harder. Um, and I know there are probably some people out there that are artists that are going to hear, oh, no references, use references, blah, 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 blah. Like, um, when I'm looking at things like, okay, like obviously, like when I'm doing anatomy or something like that, I use reference, but like when you're trying to pull an effect from your mind, like it's really hard to uh, pull reference for something to where there is no reference. Um, but anyways, here's the final piece. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and have fun. Until next time.